All right, so I want to look at a couple of more examples from similar to what we did in class, not the exact same ones, but something that you could, get a little bit extra practice so you can go through this, look at the problems, pause it, try to work them yourself, and then check your answers, and I'll go through the work. Or you can just follow through it with me to try to get a better understanding of what exactly we did in class today. So these are 1.2 extra examples, and this is coming from the textbook on page 14. So if you still have your textbook, that's where you can find those problems. But again, I'll have them pasted on the slides here throughout. All right, so we're going to use this following information posted at the end of the trading day on April 22nd to answer 2 through 7. All right, so number 2, it says, what was the difference between the 52-week high and the 52-week low price for one share of PetroChina? All right, so we want to go to PetroChina, which is here, and we're going to concern ourselves just with that particular company. All right, so let me shrink my pen down here a little bit. There we go. So if we're looking here at PetroChina, we're going to take the 52-week high and the 52-week low, and we're going to get the difference. So the 52-week high for PetroChina was 266.81 minus the low, which was 112.11, giving us a difference of, when you do that subtraction, simply $154.70. All right, so just simply 154.70, so it's just subtraction. Biggest thing here is this is making sure you understand how exactly to interpret this particular table. All right, go ahead and read the number 3. So we're looking at McDonald's Corporation, and we're going to find the difference now between the day's high. So this was the 52-week high and low. Now we want the high and low for this particular day. So in number 3 here, what we need to do is we're going to go to McDonald's now, which is here. We're going to take the high, 58.77, and again we're finding the difference, so minus 57.42, and so our difference here in number 3 is $1.35. All right, so in number 2 we were looking at the 52-week high and low, but in number 3 we were just comparing the high and low for that particular day on April 22nd. Excuse me. All right, now we got to determine some volumes. So if you remember, sometimes the volume isn't just listed as the actual number because it's sometimes such a large number. So in this case, it's being listed in hundreds. So what we got to do is, for Berkshire Hathaway, we're going to take this number 4.11, and we're going to do this for all of them because it's being the volume is being represented in hundreds. That means we're going to multiply by 100, or we're going to take this decimal point and move it 2 times to our right. So for Berkshire, your answer would be 411. All right, so that means that 411 shares of the Berkshire Hathaway were sold or traded, I guess I should say, on that particular day. For McDonald's Corp, do the same thing. So we come down here. So remember, for any whole number, there's no decimal point shown, but we know that it's here. And if you move it twice to the right and put zeros in those humps, we got 106,077,000, leaving us with 10,607,700 shares of the McDonald's Corp. Go ahead and pause it and take a moment and try to do Texas Instrument and Westpac. All right, so for Texas Instrument, same process here. If we go to Texas Instrument, decimal points here, bump it twice to the right. So I'll draw an arrow out here. So for Texas Instrument, we're talking about 288,01200. Throw your commas in there. So we're talking about 28,801,200. And then lastly, for Westpac Banking, which is the last one here, move it twice to the right again. So it's going to be 33,2700. So we're talking about 332,700 shares. All right, so that's 2, 3, 4. Let's go on here now. And number 5 is saying determine the closing price on April 21st for each of the following stocks. So remember, all of this information that we have is from the 22nd. So to get our closing price here in number 5, what we need to do is the last amount on, what are we looking at for Texas Instrument? If we go to Texas Instrument, that last amount was 85. And this is the change. This is down. This change is talking about the difference from today's closing and the previous day. So this is down 174. So if you think about that, if it's down 174, that means that it was more on April 21st. So to get our answer, what we're going to do is we're going to take 28.85, today's closing, and add it. We got to flip the sign there. We're going to add $1.74 because we want the previous day's closing. And when you add those two numbers, so the closing on the 21st would have been $30.59. All right, that can be a little tricky, but because we're talking about the previous day, what's shown here is April 22nd. We want the closing price for April 21st. So what we did is we took today's last trading price, the 28.85, which was down $1.74 from yesterday's last trading price. So we're going to add that back on to determine what yesterday's closing price was. So let's try the same thing with Freeport. So if we go to Freeport now, today's last was 118.65. And now that's up $3.51. So if you think about what we did in part A, when it was down, that means we had to add back to this. Well, now since this is up, this is an increase from yesterday's. So to get yesterday's, we've got to take that number away. So we're going to subtract 351, giving you a closing price of 115.14. All right, so that's how we calculate those closing prices. Now in number 6, go ahead, take a moment to read that. Okay, so since we're trying to find the percent of net change, first of all, you need to understand that our answers are going to be percents, and we're going to use the same information from number 30. I'm going to write these answers up here so that I can erase and get some more space. So we got 30.59 in part A, and part B was 115.14. All right, so what we want to do here, whoops. So what we're going to do now is to actually get our percent change. The way we do that is we're going to take the change, the number from this column, the change from one day to the next, and divide that by our previous closing price. So we're going to by the previous close price. Okay, so if we do that, first of all, for Texas Instrument, first of all, what was the change in Texas Instrument? It was negative 174. And we're going to divide that by what was the closing price from that day? Well, that's what we found up here in number 5, so 30.59. And when we do that, you should get negative 0.057. So we're talking about a net change, a percent of net change of negative 5.7%. All right, your percent sign for net change should match what's in the sign for the change for that particular day. If there was a negative change in the dollar value, then there's going to be a negative change in percent. All right, so go ahead and take a moment and try to do the same thing for part B for the Freeport. Okay, so when you go through and do Freeport, what you should get down here for Freeport going through that exact same process is 3%. All right, so it was 3% for the Freeport. All right, let's move on to number 7. So now this is asking on April 22nd. So again, that's the information that we have in front of us. It wants to know which stock had a daily high. Here, let me erase some stuff up here. Let's get rid of all of this. Get rid of that too. So which one had a daily high, which is here. So we're looking here. That was approximately 50% lower than the 52-week high. So we're talking about here. So we want this number here to basically be half of this one. All right, approximately. So it's 50% lower. So as we go down the table here, 128.6, that doesn't look to be 50% lower than the 52-week high for Berkshire. If we test Freeport, these numbers are very close, 120.06 and 120.2, so that's not what we're looking for. Here we've got 58.7 and 63. Again, this one doesn't look to be half of that number. 140.92 and 266.81. Now this one looks like it could be reasonable. 266, You know, if you took half of that 260, you're looking at about 130, where this is a little more than that, so 140. So this looks like PetroChina is the one that we're looking for. All right, so that's the one, that's the stock that had a daily high that was approximately 50% lower than the 52-week high. All right, so let's keep on moving. Oh, what happened there? Let's get that back down here, like that. All right, so let's look at one more here. So go on April 25th, Berkshire Hathaway Inc. closed at 126,875 per share. A year earlier, one share closed at 108,750. We want to know what is the approximate 1 year percent change. All right, so now we're going to find a percent change. So the formula that we're going to use is we're going to take that new amount minus the old amount and divide it by the old amount. So if we do that, the new amount, or what happened on April 25th of this year, was 126,875 minus 108,750, and we're going to divide that by the previous year's amount, closing amount of 108,750. And when you punch that in and do the math there, you're going to end up with 0.1666666 repeating. And so if we're approximating here, we would say that this is approximately 16.7% increase. All right, obviously because this year is higher than the previous years, it's going to be an increase. If those numbers were flipped, the percent itself would have been different, but then it would have been a decrease. All right, so hopefully this was something to kind of help supplement what we did in class today. Feel free to go back and rewind and try them again, try them on your own. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to stop in and see me.